Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Castle House once again. It's good to be here for the meeting of the Homes and Communities Committee. Seems to have been a long time since we've met in this way, so it's good not to be staring at well, I was going to say good not to be staring at a computer screen, but actually most of you are for the agenda, so but at least not for the purpose of the meeting. Just start off, if I may, just by I've been given a script with some instructions and information. Now we are back in Castle House, so just if you just bear with me while I just go through this. The regulations to permit remote meetings over Microsoft Teams ended on the 9th of May. Therefore, officers have worked to create a COVID-19 safe meeting space in accordance with the current level of restrictions. This will be subject to review in accordance with the government roadmap, with the next key date being the 21st of June. Till then, we're operating in accordance with the following arrangements. Please wear a face covering unless medically exempt at all times, but members may remove face coverings when speaking and addressing the committee. One committee member per desk, as we have, all present to remain socially distanced, please, at all times. Please remain seated. Shouting is discouraged. I think it usually is, but still is. And the system is in operation, so you've entered via Civic Door 1, and if we can go out via Door 2, please, as signed. And please sanitise hands on arrival and leaving the meeting. I'm afraid the kitchen is out of use, so please use the water fountains if you require a drink, and the toilets to use are outside Civic 2. And please leave the building immediately after completion of the meeting. Just a reminder as well, I think experience from the planning committee, please do use your microphone when speaking, because we are some distance apart and we won't hear you otherwise. Just before we get into our meeting proper, I'd just like to offer thanks on behalf of the committee to a couple of members who've retired from the committee. One, of course, Councillor Irene Brown, who's retired from the council completely. So I'd like to record our thanks to Irene for her contributions to this committee, and also to Sue Saddington, who is still a councillor but is no longer a member of this committee, has moved on to do other things within the council. So both have contributed greatly to the work of this committee, so thanks very much to them. And welcome to Bob. It's actually your second committee, Bob, isn't it? But Bob's taken Sue's position, and so we're sort of one short at the moment as a committee, and I'm sure that'll be rectified when we get through our the annual refresh of committee memberships. Right, on to the meeting then. Item 1, apologies for absence. I believe we have apologies from Councillor Kath Arnold, and we have Councillor Paul Peacock substituting, and I believe everyone else is here, other than obviously the vacancy left by Irene Brown. Item 2, declarations of interest by members and officers. And as to the party whip, are there any declarations of interest? No. Item 3, any declarations of any intention to record the meeting? I just remind members that we are live streaming this meeting on the council social media platforms, and we are, as a council, recording the meeting. Any other declarations? No? Okay. Item 4 then is the minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of March 2021. Is everyone happy that they are a correct record? I can sign as such? Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. That takes us on then to item 5, which is the Chairman's report. So once again, welcome to the first in-person committee for over 12 months. It's great to see you all in person. As we adapt to being back in the offices and working safely, reports this evening will be presented by a small number of officers rather than necessarily by the author. Any questions unable to be answered tonight will of course be followed up after the meeting. The local area police commander for Newark and Sherwood, Inspector Heather Sutton, has been promoted to Chief Inspector and is now the neighbourhood policing lead for Bassetlaw, Newark and Sherwood, Broxtowe, Gedling and Rushcliffe. She's also the force lead on rural crime and is already speaking with officers from the council about the rural crime issues in the district. The new area policing commander for Newark and Sherwood is Inspector Charlotte Allardyce, who's keen to work closely with the council on a number of issues. And we look forward to working with Charlotte and meeting her in due course at one of our future meetings. The Safer Streets project was successfully completed at the end of March, and there is commitment from the Police and Crime Commissioner's Office, the police and the council to implement the learning and best practice from Safer Streets 1 into the continuation of some of the themes into neighbouring areas. The main themes will centre on burglary reduction and vehicle crime. Whilst we've seen some sunshine recently, our flooding preparation continues. The council is working with partners in both Southwell and Loudham to implement flood mitigation measures to reduce the chance of future flooding in these communities. The scheme in Southwell is progressing well, within the confines of what COVID has allowed over the past 12 months. The main scheme for Loudham is still being developed, although work on the banks of the Cocker Beck should be taking place later this year. In response to the floods in November 2019 and February 2020, the council is still administering property flood resilience grants to homeowners wishing to improve their home from the impact of flooding. So far, we've received around 50 applications. Our community lottery is now live, and the first draw took place on Saturday 29th of May. And as at the 2nd of June, we've had 49 good causes registered and 1 or 2 more in progress. 392 players, and good causes are forecast to receive around £23,500 currently. And we're hopeful that ongoing promotion will see the numbers increase, which is great news and will generate more funding for our good causes. The ban on evictions was ended on the 31st of May 2021. The council will continue the no eviction approach for tenants who are working with us to address their debts and enter into a manageable arrangement. We're prepared for opening up our community centres as soon as we have the green light to do so. Finally, I would like to draw the committee's attention to the end-of-year performance reports, which will be presented this evening and are in your papers, and hope you will join me in recognising the hard work and commitment taken to achieve these levels of performance during such an unusual and difficult year. And we will talk a little bit more about that later on. So that's my report for this evening. That takes us on then to item 6, which is the forward plan. Are there any comments or additions, anything anyone would like to see on the forward plan that's not already there? Johnny.
Chairman, thank you very much. In light of the elections and the new Police Crime Commissioner, would it be possible for us to be able to invite the Police Crime Commissioner to come to this committee, especially in light with what was said during the election?
I think that would be an excellent idea. We do have on the forward plan, certainly November, presentation from Neighbourhood Policing Inspector. I wonder, Alan, whether that might be a convenient time and whether an invitation could be extended to the new Police and Crime Commissioner, if she's available to join us on that day. If not that day, perhaps if there's an alternative meeting when she is available.
Yeah, I'm happy to approach the Chairman and see if you can make that date for us.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll note the rest of the forward plan. So that takes us on to our items for decision then this evening. Item 7 is review of tenant access service opening hours. I'll ask Suzanne to present this report, please.
Thank you, Chairman. So you may recall that at the March meeting, the committee considered a report regarding the alignment of the customer access team opening hours with that of the wider council. The committee decided that prior to making a decision, they required additional information regarding the impact this would have on the tenants. In hindsight, what the report didn't make clear that this in fact is only a temporary situation until the alignment of the two teams and the contact centre takes place, which will be in the late summer. Once the two contact centres merge into one, then the opening hours will be that of the council. To recall, the Customer Access Service Contact Centre opens at 8:30 a.m. compared to the council's opening hours at 9 a.m. This is for general calls. The Customer Access closes at 5:15 Monday to Thursday and 4:45 on a Friday, compared with the council's closing at 5 p.m. Monday to Friday. It's important to note that, like now, out of hours, emergencies would be dealt with as they are by being transferred to the 24/7 team that operates our Careline team, who would determine whether the situation required an emergency make-safe visit, as we currently do. Any urgent homelessness inquiries are also transferred to an on-call duty officer, so it's important to note that no resident would be in a situation where they could not access emergency advice. The table at 2.3 details the average number of calls received per time period, and you'll see that in the mornings the customer access team received just over 6 calls in a 15-minute period. Between 8:30 and 9 a.m. this falls to 1.8 calls. Afternoons tend to be a little quieter, and between 5 and 5:15 on average they receive 1 call every 2 days, so not even 1 call per day. As members requested, during the recent 4-week period, tenants were asked why they phoned in either before 9 a.m. or after 5 p.m. Out of the 28 callers who were asked, only 2 tenants said it would not be convenient for them to call at a different time. A further 7 were priority 1 repairs, which could still be reported as normal. The majority cited no specific reason. You may question why this change needs to come into force now and not wait until the alignment, and there are a couple of reasons for this. Firstly, the stability of the service. There is no requirement for the advisors to have an early start or late finish, which means there is an increase in the availability of staff to provide a service during our busier times. So on page 18 of your... the CAS team has a number of vacancies which we have not been able to recruit to pending the alignment. This very slight change to the opening hours will support the stability of the service at this time. And on page 18 of your packs, the recommendation set out is that the committee approves the alignment of the opening hours. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Suzanne. I think for me, I'll come to you in a second. It's the efficiency here, isn't it? I mean, there's some minor differences at the moment between the patterns of the two services, but they are fairly minor, and yet it involves us then having to have 2 shifts, and it's a really inefficient way forward at the minute. I think the committee at the last meeting quite rightly asked for some further information, which is now provided in this report in terms of numbers of calls and those hours that don't overlap just before, from 8:30 to 9, and then the 5 till 5:15 in the evening. And table at 2.5 I think is very interesting in terms of only 2 of those calls. People said that was the most convenient time for them to call, and there's not many at all during those hours, as well, as you can see from your papers. I think, Paul, you were the first to indicate.
I was just wondering, I press the right button. It's a long time since I welcome the report, and I think it makes sense to merge those services and to, I suppose, increase, particularly on a Friday. Certainly I get calls from people Friday evenings and Saturday mornings when they've got kind of emergency repair. And one of the things I wanted to say was, I wonder how that system operates, because, for instance, last Friday, I got a phone call while I was sat on my deck chair at Bridlington from a lovely lady in Everstow who lives in one of our buildings. She got a loose tile on her roof, or on the roof of the flat that she lives in, and she'd been trying to phone and get through. Now, she phoned me around about probably 5:30, 5:45. Probably because that's who she phones in an emergency usually anyway. Her words were she couldn't get through to the council. So I'm just kind of wondering that in those times when it's not the 9 to 5, is that system bearing up? Is it easy enough for particularly vulnerable people to be able to to get through and to make sure that recorded or reported problems in the appropriate way.
Yes, Councillor Peacock, it automatically transfers over to the out-of-hours system. Probably be useful to have a conversation separately to understand and make sure that that person is ringing the right number, or just to understand what it is, because sometimes over time numbers do change, so we just make sure that they've got the right number. And the other thing to probably note, not in this case, but it's also about whether the repair, it's not whether it's an emergency repair, it's a make safe service out of hours. So a loose tile, depending on if there were high winds due or whatever, may or may not be a make safe. They would just go and remove the tile, because you wouldn't necessarily have a roofer to go and repair it. So it's just to be clear that it's not an out-of-hours repairs service, it is an out-of-hours make safe service. So where it's something that didn't require an emergency response, we would send someone out on the next working day. But if we pick it up, I'll give you a call and we'll pick that up and just make sure that this lady had the support that she needed, because that doesn't fit with my experience of the services.
I think Julie's team's dealing with it, to be fair, now. And so that somebody would never say, but it's just my concern was not necessarily that issue, but whether there was an issue of people having the right number, but also even beyond the 5 o'clock call, if it's transferred to the emergency number, is that man kind of, you know, is somebody going to pick up, or is it going to be on a rolling music thing?
It is a person on the end of the phone, and it, like I say, it automatically switches over. If for any reason we have a staff member calls in sick, then it transfers over to our Tunstall service. There is always someone there on the end of that phone, so just to provide some reassurance on that.
Thanks, Suzanne. Johnny, I think it was you next, and then I've got Lawrence indicating.
Chairman, thank you very much. It's several questions, and hopefully you'll let me come back depending on what the answers are. So I just want to clarify what I'm understanding is right. A lot of the answers have been already answered. A lot of the questions have already been answered. So, from how I understand it, both teams, Newark and Sherwood team and Newark and Sherwood District Council team, are going to be amalgamated, and they're both going to be working at the same office. Yes. And it will be the same team. So if I ring up District Council, I'll get put through, and depending on what I answer, that person will be able to deal with it. Oh, superb. Absolutely superb, because that will be, I haven't got the figures, but I can see that being a massive cost-saving exercise, not have to run two teams, not have to run two facilities. So that is great news. I'm looking forward to seeing the outcome of that. Thank you.
Thanks, Johnny. Lawrence.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. After hours, when you ring the switchboard number, it doesn't really tell you exactly. They say they're closed, but you say so. You put more people just put the phone down, but technically there is somebody on call, and there needs to be more clarity on when a council is closed. There is somebody will return your call or will actually come on the line. So I think we need to get more clarity on the phone system, because when you ring the council, it says we are closed, so most people put the phone back down. But if they say stand by, we will answer your call, because after hours they do operate 24/7. So we need to get more clarity to let people know they will respond to their call or leave a message. So I think we need to get more clarity on that, Mr. Chairman.
I'll take that away, Lawrence, and we will double check what the message says and make sure that the options and things reflect the out-of-hours arrangements. I think in addition it was probably going to be worth putting something in either our tenant annual report or our next rent statement, which goes to all of our tenants as well, just to make sure they've got the information in a number of different formats. So I'm happy to take that away and make sure that that's done.
Anyone else want to speak on this item? Oh, okay, and I'll propose a recommendation from the chair, which is that the committee approve the alignment of the opening hours. Do you have a seconder for that? Rona, thank you. All those in favour then please show. I think that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Item 8 is review of the corporate health and safety policy. I'll ask Alan Batty to present this one, please.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an update of the corporate health and safety policy, taking account the changes that have occurred to the council over the last couple of years, and in particular bringing back in-house the housing service. 2.3, Chairman, sets out the main changes to the report, but the updated policy is attached as an appendix, and we've highlighted the changes in there so that members can see those quite easily. There aren't any major fundamental changes to the policy. Much of it remains the same. We've set out, as I've said in the report, the major changes to it. A lot of that around wording and changes in structure, as I've said, to the changes that have occurred. As it's a major policy of the council with implications in terms of our legal responsibilities, we're seeking recommendations from this committee, and then it will go to policy and finance. It has been to the Joint Consultative Committee for their comments from the unions. They've made a few minor suggestions that we'll take into account, but I'll answer any members' questions if there are any, Chairman.
Thanks, Alan. Michael. Oh, sorry. Johnny, did you put your hand up as well? We'll get Michael first, and I'll come back to you.
Thank you, Chair. Alan, part of the health and safety policy is the health and well-being of staff and employees involved within that, or is it an additional appendices part of it, because it's part of the health and safety legislation these days?
I didn't quite catch the end. I didn't quite catch the question, I don't think.
The health and well-being part of the health and safety policy is normally linked in within as an appendices as part of the health and safety policy. I can't actually see it as part of this one, so I'm just wondering if there's a separate policy for that purpose.
Yeah, so certainly over the last 18 months, and in general, the council's invested a lot of time and effort in the well-being of our staff, and certainly sort of mental health issues as well, that have been sort of exacerbated by the pandemic. We don't have that as a specific element of the corporate health and safety policy, but we do have separate policies for well-being, mental health champions, and an overall well-being policy for our staff and members as well. So that is catered for.
Thank you, Johnny.
Chairman, thank you. I may be missing something here. B10. Now, I've read it. Number A, keep the Chief Executive and SLT informed of changes in legislation. Would that also be the Chairman of the Council? And the reason I say that is I think of what happened in London with Grenfell. It was actually the councillors that were blamed for that. Will the strategic leadership also tell the leader of the council to make sure they are being informed? So if decisions need to be made, the right people are being told.
So legally speaking, Chairman, the Chief Executive is the responsible officer, and if woe betide, we do have issues whereby there are breaches of health and safety, which is why the Chief Executive takes so seriously. He'll be the one who has to answer the questions in court. Clearly, our governance structures allows for members and this committee being the committee that has the overall responsibility for managing health and safety, need to be kept informed. Whether, and I'd have to check with our governance arrangements, whether the chairman of the council is the right person to also be involved. My suggestion probably is that's a discussion that we would have with the leader and deputy leader. But in terms of legislative responsibility, it sits with the chief executive.
I appreciate that explanation. Thank you.
Rob.
Thank you. Alan, I'm new to this committee and I may have missed it somewhere, but would you please explain to me 2.3 bullet point 5, the use of latex glove is removed. In this day and age with all the COVID etc. that's going around, surely we're not moving them, removing them is a poor...
So yes, and I will explain because it does seem counterintuitive, doesn't it? we used to have latex is quite can be quite can produce an allergic reaction in some people. So we had a separate policy on the use of latex gloves. Nothing to do with the spread of infection, but just the fact that it's a material that has some side effects. We used to have that within the broader corporate health and safety policy. In reviewing it this time, we've decided that we still need a policy on latex gloves, but it shouldn't sit within the corporate health and safety policy. It should sit out that along with our other policies on things like asbestos and how we deal with other things. So we're not suggesting that it's not important or we ought to remove the mentions of it. It's just that it shouldn't sit within the broader policy because it just doesn't sit comfortably within there.
Yeah, I mean, the bullet point, bullet point 5 does say use of latex gloves removed. So, to me, you see, yeah.
Through you, Chairman, it's removed from the corporate health and safety policy in terms of being included in this as a mention, but we do have a separate policy that sits outside which answers to this.
Thank you, Alan.
Rona?
Thank you, Chairman. Thanks. It's just a quick question on item 17.4 on the PAT testing certificates. It mentions about contractors all ensuring that third parties have been suitably tested. Do the contractors have to provide PAT certificates prior to commencement of the work then? Thank you.
So if we have contractors working on our behalf, going into our doing work for us, we have a system whereby they're required to submit their documentation prior to starting that work, and appliance testing will be one of those requirements that we want to see on any equipment that they're using on site.
Thank you very much, Alan. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, anyone else want to speak on this item? No? Okay. The recommendation is on page 20 at paragraph 7, that members consider the reviewed health and safety policy and make and suggest any amendments for deliberation by the Policy and Finance Committee. I don't think there are any amendments which we are suggesting, so effectively I think we are recommending that the policy be agreed for onward deliberation by the Policy and Finance Committee. I'll move that. Do we have a seconder? Betty, thank you. All those in favour, please show. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Item 9, proposal for public space protection orders, Newark Town Centre and sites in Balderton. That's you again, Alan, I believe.
Yes, Chairman, thank you. Members will recall that at the last meeting of the committee, I presented a report on a proposal for the introduction of public space protection orders for Newark Town Centre and 3 areas in Balderton. And we said that if the committee were minded to approve that report, we would go out to consultation. And this report brings back the results of that consultation, Chairman. Set out at 2.1 are the organisations that we consulted with. In addition to that, we put the proposal on our website and sought comments from the public, as well as the statutory consultees, which were numerous bodies which are included into one, but in addition the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner, the local police inspector, and the owners of any land that might be included. We've set out in the report in Appendix 1 the responses that we received from the consultees, and you will see from that that the majority, or in fact I think all of them, are supportive of the proposals, with a few comments in terms of what they want us to move forward with. So what we're proposing this evening, Chairman, is that we introduce the public space protection order in the 4 areas as suggested. Newark Town Centre, which the maps are attached as appendix to the report. Newark Town Centre, which will be an area that matches the current PSPO for drinking in public spaces, so that will be an exact match for that area. and then 3 areas in Balderton, one covering Balderton Lake, one covering the Lakeside Shopping Centre, and one covering Coronation Park. The terms of the order, so what we're allowing the order to empower authorised officers to do, is in effect require individuals to leave an area if it's considered that they are or likely to cause antisocial behaviour, as set out in 4.2 of the report. So it's not banning groups of youth joining together, it's not banning people from undertaking activities in the area, it's giving the police and authorised officers of this council powers to disperse those groups if they're causing antisocial behaviour for various reasons, many of which were related to groups gathering last year and particularly this year with groups gathering and particularly having issues around wildlife crime and using catapults in particularly the areas around Balderton. So we still think it's pertinent that these are introduced more so than perhaps will be started out on this journey in terms of proposing them. It's not proposed to authorise any members of the town or parish councils to authorise to enforce this. We believe because it's a power of dispersal that ought to sit with either the police or officers of this council, Chairman. If there are any questions, I'll take them from members.
Jono.
Chairman, it gives me great privilege to be able to formally propose this. The council, and I want to start by thanking the officers and the police, because the residents get really frustrated, but what they don't realise is the amount of work, the amount of work something like this takes by the officers in the background to get something like this done. It takes a long time, it's not easy. And myself and Betty and other district councillors and parish councillors involved in this, in Balderton in particular, where I represent, we've been fighting antisocial behaviour for 6 years. And to see something like this hopefully be voted on tonight will give the district council and the police more power to be able to finally, once and for all, be able to resolve antisocial behaviour in Balderton. So a big thank you to the officers, a big thank you to everybody that's been involved, and from the residents, thank you very much.
Thanks, Jono. Lawrence?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, as you probably appreciate, Newark, Devon Park, Scont Park is in the news again, unfortunately. We're grateful to have a brand new ranger who's only been in post 3 weeks. He's had a very busy 3 weeks, to be honest. And I just want to make sure we can give more support to him when needed because of the antisocial behaviour in the park. And we've had the police over there and so forth. But the idea is we just want to make sure we can get protecting our parks in the future. And hopefully we can get some other devices which will help the situation in the park. And I'm just want to make sure you realise we've got a nice ranger started. He's enthusiastic. He's got a lot of ideas, and I'm happy to see if we can put forward some of his proposals in the future. And hopefully you'll meet him in the future. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Lawrence. Anyone else wish to come in on this item? Okay, there's obviously discussion on this very much at the last meeting in terms of the agreement to go out and consult. I think it's fairly clear from the response to the consultation and the comments have been made this evening that it's very much supported. So Jono has already moved the recommendation, which is on page 76, paragraph 9, A and B. And seconder, Betty, you're going to second that? Okay, thank you very much indeed. We'll then move to the vote. All those in favour, please. And that again is unanimous. Thank you very much. So item 10 is the annual review of exempt reports considered by the Homes and Communities Committee. Suzanne, did you want to say something briefly on this one?
Thank you, Chairman. So this report provides an annual review of the exempt business put before this committee from the 14th September 2020 to date, as is set out in paragraph 3.1. And this is where all the reports have been exempt due to paragraph 3, which is commercially sensitive. You will see that the authors have recommended that these reports remain exempt, and so section 4 asks the committee to consider whether content should remain exempt. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's useful to know or be reminded of the reason for the exemption, and as Suzanne said, in each of these cases it's commercial confidentiality for each of these 4 items. What I've asked for future reports, just to help us when we get the reports and read them outside, before the meeting, is if there can be another column just added, just to remind us what the original reason for the confidentiality was. But as it's commercial confidentiality on each of these, then obviously that remains as an issue. Anyone got any comments on this one? Michael.
Thank you, Chair. The one on the 15th of March 2020 about the Newark Town Centre and Balderton sites, because of it actually being the area covered. We've literally just voted on the areas being covered, which has been put in the public domain, so surely that staying exempt would be slightly double dutch because we've just voted on it, with it already being in the public domain for consultation and everything else post that.
Yeah, I mean, it was the exempt appendix that's being referred to. But Alan, do you want to give
Right,
a
there was
specific
police
reason?
data included in the exempt appendix, so the police don't want that releasing because it did have some personal data in.
Anyone else? Right, so the recommendation is we consider whether the content of the report should remain exempt. I'm going to propose from the chair that they do remain exempt. Scott, are you seconding that?
Yes, Chair.
Excellent, thank you very much. All those in favour? Again, that's unanimous, thank you. Right, we're on to part 2 of our agenda now, items for information. Item 11, Safer Streets Fund End of Project Report. And it's back to you, Alan.
Thank you, Chairman. You mentioned in your Chairman's report about the safer streets, and this really just pulls together for members' awareness the final outturn of the Safer Streets 1 scheme that was in Newark. Just to remind members, the fund allocated £550,000 to Newark for this scheme, of which the district council got £118,000. I've set out in 2.5 onwards the themes of Safer Streets 1 and what happened for each of those themes and some of the outturn from the projects that were delivered there. I think more importantly, what I'd like to draw members' attention to is the end of project survey, and the results or the highlights of the results are set out in paragraph 3.2. I think those speak very highly of the work and the impact that it had. 83% of respondents felt safer, 53% felt the area was cleaner, 40% felt safer after dark, and that was a real key for us because we improved the lighting and we did lots of work around burglary reduction. And I guess even more important is that 44% felt that the community looked after each other better. And we have got the hub at Chatham Court coming online very soon now, and that will build that community capacity in that area of Newark. So yeah, really positive result. As the chairman said in his report, we are now looking at I think we originally called it Safer Streets 2, but we've been asked by the Police and Crime Commission not to refer to it as that, because there is actually Safer Streets 2, which is the second Home Office initiative. So I think we're calling it something like Safer Streets Continued, and there's 3 adjacent areas in Newark that feed on from the Safer Streets 1 that we've done in Newark, and we are committed to rolling that out over the next 12 months. So it's a far smaller scheme, a smaller, fewer themes, and smaller money to be spent, but we still think we've learned a lot from Safer Streets 1, and some of that learning is going into the second Safer Streets element that we're now looking to do. But I think Safer Streets 1, Chairman, really positive for this district and money well spent.
Thank you, Alan. Linda first, and then Lawrence. I think John indicated as well.
Thank you. It's clearly a super scheme and very successful, and I do look forward to Safer Streets Continued. Can I just ask whether we can have some focus within that for rural areas? As you know, Alan, we've had a lot of problems out in the villages. It's ongoing. And anything that we can do to bring some of the learning from this scheme out to the villages and the rural areas would be very welcomed. Thank you.
Lawrence?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I'm grateful for the Council and the Crime Commissioner, the Police and Crime Commissioners, and Terry Bailey and other staff members that are supporting the Community Hub. And I'm grateful for all the street lights, the LED lights, which was a lot of the lights, 15 of them were out for quite a while, and they're all being replaced. We've got a nice bicycle provisions, so I can safely put my bike in one of those locks when I'm visiting Chatham Court, which I'm grateful for. So I'm grateful that things are happening at Chatham Court for the better, and we can liaison. We are having a launch, and grateful for Terry Bailey's support. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Jono?
Chairman, I appreciate this report. It's a very good report. The one thing I would ask is something that I see all the time, is you see different projects happening with different councils and different police projects, district council projects, YMCA, county council, all doing pretty much the same thing. And something that I constantly push and constantly ask for is more working together, where a little bit of money can go a long way if we all put our money together and we all work towards the same benefit. Saying that we're kind of doing that anyway. So the question is what are we doing working with our partners to make sure these projects aren't forgotten about in a year's time and we can carry on working on? Because we all know what funding is like. We all know different things come in the media, different things happen. How can we make sure that the work isn't forgotten about in 4 or 5 years' time working with our partners?
Yeah, I'll pick up on that if I may then, Chairman. So, I mean, this was a really good example of a lot of the agencies coming together. So, yeah, I mean, the key agencies were ourselves, the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner, the local police and the County Council were the 4 main agencies involved. But then we engaged with lots of the different departments in the County Council. So, as Councillor Goss touched on, the street lighting team did a lot of work on street lighting. The community development team did a lot of work on the surveys and developing the community capacity, and within our own council, the environmental services team did a lot of work on cleaning the area and having mini days of action to improve that. Obviously, public protection was heavily involved, as were the housing services in development of the hub at Chatham Court and engaging with the tenants and doing some joint work in terms of improving the burglary reduction at Chatham Court. So there was some really good joined up working. I think what will come out of that is the hub at Chatham Court has already got lots of partners wanting to work with us at that hub. So the fire service, the probation service, the Citizen Advice Bureau, to name but 3, which are already saying, yeah, let us work from there and work with your communities, let it be a centre for people to come. So I think we are supporting the philosophy that Councillor Lee has just outlined, and we will continue to make sure that the partners in Safer Streets deliver the continued element as well as pulling in anybody else that we think can add value.
Thanks, Alan. Paul?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to echo what Councillor Dale said, really. I think this scheme has been a fantastic scheme. I think there's lots of lessons been learned for those areas that's been affected. But a lot of those things, a lot of those same issues exist right across the district, particularly within our own housing stock areas. One of the things that I picked up on was the lighting. I've had a number of areas that I cover have got a real problem with lighting, particularly in elderly people's areas, bungalows, etc. And it's a simple thing. It's a simple thing for us to go out there and make assessments and work with the community and find out what all their anxieties are about it. A lot of it's perceived, but there is a lot of crime in our rural areas. There's certainly a lot of opportunistic crime, and a lot of vulnerable people don't feel safe in their own home. So things like street lighting, things like PIR lighting on their bungalows, etc., can make them feel less anxious about what's going on, particularly during the night, but also get that street lighting so that they can go out and enjoy their communities and not be put off. So again, I'd like to ask a question that Councillor Dale alluded to was, you know, this is great, we've learnt lessons, how can we put that across the whole district, particularly in those areas where we do know where vulnerable people are?
Yeah, if I may, Chairman. So yes, and Councillor Dales and Councillor Peacock are quite right. There's been an awful lot of learning from safety, admittedly in an urban environment, but lots that can be used in more rural environments. And again, as you touched on in your introduction, Chairman, Heather Sutton was one of the key partners in delivering Safer Streets as Inspector for Newark. She's now gone to Chief Inspector, and as you said, Chairman, is now leading the rural crime support across the whole of the county, and she's already looking at getting a rural crime group up and running and taking some of her learning from Safer Streets into that wider group. So, you know, what we have learned isn't going unused, and certainly some of the technology that we've used within that urban setting, lower level CCTV for burglary reduction, can be used in the rural environment, and we're already having those discussions, Chairman. So yes, yeah, we are looking at what we've learned and how that can be used across the whole of Newark and Sherwood.
Thanks, Alan. Anyone else want to come in on this item? No? Okay. I just want to highlight just one of those statistics really that Alan mentioned in his introduction, and I think that for me that sort of sums up this initiative, and that's 83% of respondents to the survey said they felt safer because of this project. I mean, that is massive when you think about it. That's almost everybody feels safer because of this project. If that's not a success, then I don't know what is. So well done to everybody, and thanks to everybody who's been involved in that. I think we have made similar comments in previous meetings when we've talked about this project, but it's good to see it as an end of project report and just to see all the detail involved, and it is a very comprehensive report. So again, thanks to you, Alan, and any other colleagues who've been involved in putting that together as a report as well as the project itself. I think it's been very successful. I'm delighted we've done it. I'm delighted that we're able to continue that on as well. And I'm sure we'll be looking at future Home Office funding projects, official Safer Streets 2 or 3 or whatever it may be as well. And again, I'm sure, Alan, you'll take away the comments, you know, regarding whether some of this learning can be used in other parts of the district as well. So thanks very much. Well, it's just for information, so the recommendation is basically that we note the success of the project and the positive survey results, which I'm sure we will do. So that takes us then on to item 12, antisocial behaviour. I think it's your last one, Alan.
Yes, Chairman, thank you. You recall that at the last meeting there was a request by this committee just to have an update on where we currently sit with antisocial behaviour across the district. So this hopefully sets out a bit of background to how we define antisocial behaviour, the sorts of things we have in place to deal with it. But I think more importantly, towards the end of the report, the types of interventions that we can do to help prevent antisocial behaviour. And those really fall into two main themes, Chairman. The sort of preventative things we can do, so implementation of things like public space protection orders, a whole range of diversionary activities that we've got planned for this year, as well as those reactive things. So yeah, a problem crops up and we increase our patrols, or we take enforcement action and throw the weight of our legal powers behind anything we want to do. It's not always easy. We've seen a big increase in antisocial behaviour over the last 12 months, and you know, we're not shying away from that. A lot of that was COVID related in terms of a lot of young people weren't within the confines of school for a lot of last year, which meant that you know they had more opportunity to cause antisocial behaviour, and that did happen. But allied to that is the fact that we could take our level of antisocial behaviour based on police figures, and some of the COVID-related breaches were classed as antisocial behaviour. So that's why at paragraph 2.5 you see the big increase in the number of antisocial behaviour incidents and the big percentage increase in antisocial behaviour across the district. Yeah, I think that puts some context in terms of where we are. Antisocial behaviour is up 71%, but a lot of that is police related antisocial behaviour, not necessarily the sorts of things that this district council might deal with. That said, there was clearly some issues, and we've heard the members from Balder talk about the issues they experienced through last year, and so the report I presented previously outlines our reaction to some of that. We do have a very proactive antisocial behaviour team. We're putting a lot of things in place to address antisocial behaviour, and we will continue to do so. But if members have got any particular issues or any particular problems, we'll always try and respond to those in a very constructive and proactive way wherever possible. As I've said, in 4.1 onwards in the report, we've set out some of our current actions and interventions, and since writing this report, Chairman, we've also looked at a whole scheme of diversionary activities addressing antisocial behaviour across the district to engage younger people in some diversionary activities that will hopefully increase their knowledge of the distress they may be causing, but also give them an outlet for some of their energy to prevent them causing ASB. Hopefully that helped, but I'll take any questions if there are any, Chairman.
Thank you, Alan. Yeah, very helpful. Rona, and then Lawrence.
Thank you, Chairman. Thanks very much, Alan, for this. I've found this really, really interesting, and gives me a lot more insight into the processes that you're involved with when you take on an antisocial behaviour problem. So it's been really useful to read it and to understand it, because when you talk to people who are involved with it, at least I can then sort of explain properly what the process is likely to be, the types of things that might happen. So it gives me a lot more confidence in that, rather than always having to ring up and say, what happens next, what happens next. So it's been really good, and I thank you for that. Thank you, Chairman.
Thanks, Rona. Lawrence.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sure Alan will be happy to meet our new ranger at Devon Park, Scompton Devon Park, because he's got a lot of ideas to come forward to how we can ratify this problem of antisocial behaviour in the park, and hopefully Alan and his team will meet with the new ranger, Simon. And also, antisocial behaviour also includes other problems on housing estates, which is fly tipping, which is a big increase in. I hate to tell you, we have to try and work out. We can either get people to have an area where they can get rid of their furniture and not just dump it at various locations, and how we can reward people to report things and ring 101 when it's needed to do so, to report these items of people just dumping their items on a housing estate. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Paul and then Betty.
Thank you, Chair. And I probably ought to have done so before, but just so it's on record, to thank Alan's team for what they've done over the last past year. It's been a real eye-opener to find out all the different things that they've had to deal with because of coronavirus, as well as on top of their day job. So I think thanks should be passed on to Alan and his team. I'm interested in the 71% increase. I kind of want to explore that a bit more. Would you say, there's a number of questions, but so would you say that's part an increase in bad behaviour, part a lot of people being at home seeing bad behaviour or what they think is bad behaviour and reporting it? And so following on from that, do we record the increases in interventions that we make, or either ourselves or the police make, so that we can look at, if there's an increase in 71% in reports, how many of those reports actually were kind of just people just reporting because they've got nothing better to do, and how much was it? And because we've had such a lot of reports to investigate between ourselves and the police, how's the staff managed that? And if they've managed that well this time, or have they not managed it? Because obviously there's a massive increase in work. Do you see that behaviour trends as we go forward sort of continually in that same vein, in that those young people who go out misbehaving are going to continue misbehaving once they're back at school and once they do, and also people who have got used to reporting on social behaviour will continue to report it, and that still leaves our staff with a lot more capacity to deal with issues, and that takes time. So I just wondered what your thoughts were on all those issues.
I'll try and answer those, Chairman. It is really complicated because I think there are two important points there. There were certainly more people out of school because the schools were closed, so there were more young people on the street. Now, to some people, the perception of young people on the street automatically gives a bit of fear to them. So I think an element of the increased numbers is, I'm not used to seeing this number of young people gathered together. I'll report it, whether it's to the parish council, whether it's to ourselves, or whether to the police. So that's an element of it. I think, secondly, there are more people working at home, so more people to see the increased numbers of people on the street, so that adds to it. And I think, thirdly, there was just an increase in antisocial behaviour, as much as I'm not trying to make excuses. Those first two weren't excuses. I think we saw a big increase in antisocial behaviour. Mainly, I think, because there was the same, perhaps, ringleaders of antisocial behaviour around, but they had a bigger group to behave in front of. There was a bit of peer pressure. So we saw bigger groups moving across wider geographical areas of Newark, Balderton, Farndon, Fernwood, and then further afield, Ollerton, Edwinstowe, Clipston. So we had an overall spread of antisocial behaviour across most of the districts. I think the other element is that, as I touched on in my introduction, we take a lot of our numbers in terms of measuring the overall level of ASB from the police, and their figures, although measuring antisocial behaviour, were a little bit skewed by response to coronavirus. So gatherings of more than 6 people, for example, if that was reported to the police, it would go down as antisocial behaviour. So a lot of the coronavirus figures were wrapped up in our 71% increase. So and the police figure always compare year on year. So it's comparing this April with last April, for example. So last June, when we were seeing quite a big increase in coronavirus reports and other antisocial behaviour, it was being compared to the previous June, which actually was really low. So we had a very low baseline being compared to a very much increasing baseline. So that's why we've got the 71%. And I'm sure as you get updates from me on where we currently sit with antisocial behaviour, when we're comparing this year with the very high base level next year, you're likely to see antisocial behaviour coming down again. So it is sort of reflective year on year. In terms of the level of intervention, Yes, the police responded to as many calls as they could, as did we. I think what we saw this year wasn't so much a big increase in the overall number, just that the incidents were that much bigger to deal with, bigger groups, lasting a bigger length of time, with more work needed to manage that. And Bolton was a really good example throughout last summer. There were some very big groups that we had to deal with 3 or 4 times a week as they moved around different areas. So we saw a more in-depth intervention rather than perhaps the sort of in and out intervention that we might normally have with some levels of ASB. In terms of the trend, I've talked about the trend in terms of numbers. In terms of the trend in terms of behaviour, last year I think we saw a lot of petty vandalism and sort of just gathering of groups and throwing stones at cars as they passed, damaging people's gardens, damaging people's fences, that sort of low-level vandalism. Whereas, I think as I touched on earlier, we've seen a move away from that to more sort of the use of catapults, the more targeted sort of antisocial behaviour against wildlife in some areas, against property in other areas. So there is, the trend does appear to be changing, but a lot of that is social media driven. Yeah, something that's happening in one area soon catches on in another area. So it might not stay as it is. Yeah, like I said, the wildlife issue has been given as a cause for concern for the past 5-6 months, say, but that might not be the trend next year. It might be something different as social media drives something different. But all we can do is have our interventions in place, because broadly the illegal interventions are applicable to most circumstances anyway, Chairman. So those are in place, but just be able to respond to what's put in front of us, and you know, the staff are trained and committed enough to want to do that, and we'll do that. So hopefully that answers your question. I don't have all the answers, but hopefully that's shed a bit of light on where I think we currently are.
Thanks, Alan. Betty, and then Malcolm.
Thank you, Chairman. It's not as long as that, Alan. It was just a thanks to the community protection officers, because they're doing a fabulous job around the lake. They're there quite a lot, and they're invaluable, really. So that's just a thanks to them, please, and you. Thank you, Chairman.
Malcolm.
Alan, an impression rather than looking for specifics, but to what extent, in your view, are drugs and alcohol drivers here?
Quite limited in terms of sort of, yes, there are some drug takers across the district, and alcohol plays a factor as well. But in terms of the high numbers of antisocial behaviour incidents that we were responding to, a lot of them were sort of young teenage type individuals where drugs or alcohol wasn't really a factor. We then have a slightly different cohort of street drinkers, stroke groups that alcohol is a factor. But that is quite a small group. We know a lot of them. We know where they normally drink, and we respond to that accordingly. And then I guess in terms of I was going to say recreational drugs, but it's not even a drug. The use of nitrous oxide, for example, which is quite prevalent in young people. Again, we've got a small number of sites across the district where that is a factor, and we're looking at how we might deal with those. But I think generally the use of drugs and the use of alcohol isn't a really big driver in terms of antisocial behaviour for us.
Thank you. That's comforting to learn.
Anyone else want to come on this item? Johnny?
Chairman, thank you very much. Yet again, the officers have been superb, because Alan did mention it, and he was spot on, is what wasn't antisocial behaviour 2 years ago is classed as antisocial behaviour now. So kids meeting more than groups in 6. I got lots of complaints during lockdown with that, and people having garden parties, people doing this. What wasn't classed as antisocial behaviour is now somewhat classed as antisocial behaviour. And the officers have dealt marvellously with it. Like, they have been stretched. They haven't complained once. well, not to us anyway, and they've done a great job and a sterling job. And I know I've said it, but we must give our thanks to the police and our officers that have done a superb job in a very, very difficult circumstances, where going out could have cost you your life. And that's what people need to remember. Now, we're coming to the end of it, is these officers were still doing their job when there was lots and lots of people around the world dying. So a big thank you, and I really do mean it.
Absolutely well said, Jono. Anyone else? Didn't see anyone else indicating. Okay, well, the report once again is for information. We're asked to note the data relating to ASB and the range of activities both delivered and planned that are in place to address ASB, and the report and Alan's presentation does do that, or give us that information in some detail, so we will note that. Alan, you're very welcome to stay if you'd like to, but as you finish your reports now, I fully understand if you wish to leave. And on the same note, with committee's agreement, I will bring forward item 19, which is Nick's only item. So Nick, you'll be able to then leave after that item. So Homes and Communities, Revenue and Capital Financial Outturn Report to 31st of March 2021. Nick.
Thank you, Chair. So, as suggested in the title, this is the outturn report for the year to 31st of March 2021. The paragraph at 2.1 suggests the favourable variance that we saw on the Homes and Communities Committee during last financial year, which was around £68,000. The appendix at A, which is on page 159 of the pack, gives a more detailed breakdown at cost centre level of where those variances have come from, and offers a little bit of a description as to where that's come from. The table at 2.2 shows the outturn from the HRA's perspective. So that first paragraph 2.1 was presented within this committee. 2.2 looks at the HRA's position, and that shows a favourable variance of 2,174,000, and the table gives a breakdown of where that's come from. This is broadly in line with what was reported at the January committee, which was just over £2 million. So in terms of the forecasting, we've been quite hot on that in terms of where we thought the position was going to be at the end of the year. Paragraph 2.3 just gives a bit more indication of where that has been transferred into the council's balance sheet. The majority of that has been transferred into the major repairs reserve. What has been transferred into other earmarked reserves is the 691,000, which is the net efficiencies that have been generated on the decision to bring back Newark and Sherwood Homes and that service into the council, together with another 14,000 of contributions that was received from Efficiency East Midlands, who is a partner of the organisation. Effectively, it's a framework provider whereby a lot of the capital projects and some of the bigger revenue projects are passed through that in order for the procurement processes, and they give a little rebate in terms of some of the money that we've passed through that service. So those two add up to the 691, and the 14 come to the 705,000 that's been transferred into earmarked reserves, and then the remaining 1,469,000 has been transferred into the major repairs reserve, as it suggests to fund future capital expenditure. The tables at 2.4 and 2.5 summarise the outturn position over the capital programme in the general fund at 2.4 and the HRA at 2.5, and the appendices at B and C give a little bit more detail around the actual schemes themselves and where those have outturned at the end of the year. That's all I'd like to say, unless there's any questions, and I'll take them if I can.
Johnny?
Chairman, thank you very much. And I think what I said at the beginning on one of the items is a question for this, is have we seen the savings for bringing our people that answer the phones for Newark and Sherwood Homes over to Newark and Sherwood District Council? Has that saving been put in here? Because I couldn't find it.
At the moment, they've been kept separate. The function, the customer services function that was always under Newark and Sherwood Homes will be charged at the moment into here. So we're working throughout this year to effectively bring those functions into the general fund to be managed by the general fund, and hence then there'll be further recharges for things like Jill Baker's time for managing that function. But then yes, overall there will be a reduction in the charge to the HRA in terms of that overall function.
That's superb. Chairman, that's the main reason we wanted to bring Newark and Sherwood Home in-house to do them savings, and that's why I'm pushing to trying to find them answers, because it looks like we made the right decision. So great news.
Thank you. Anyone else want to come in on this one? Paul.
I'm always interested in HRA, so thanks for that, Nick. I'm interested because a few years ago I stood in this chamber and argued about an increase in rents, suggesting that we should stick to the normal, was it 2.9 that we go with, or whatever it is, 2.2, and that would have cost the HRA less than £500,000 if we'd have gone down that road. And I got a barrage from members opposite saying, you can't mess with the 30-year plan, you can't do this, you can't do that. Which is okay if you don't understand how it works. I kind of do understand how it works, but what I'm saying to you is, if we've now got this underspend, you know I'm big into underspends, we've got this underspend of £2.174 million, how does that affect the 30-year plan?
So in terms of the 30-year plan, clearly there are additional funds that have been able to be put into the capital reserves effectively to fund future capital expenditure. What we clearly need to look at going forward is what are the going to be the demands on HRA going forward. So there are a number of things that are coming forward. The social housing green paper, is it? I'm looking towards Suzanne in terms of some of the additional requirements. So we've got the decarbonisation agenda, and clearly at certain points in time these things wouldn't have been on the table, and going forward there are a number of additional requirements that are going to be levied on the HRA. So what we need to do is just balance that. As you say, yes, there'll be surplus funds that are being transferred into HRA balances to fund those additional requirements. But it's just a question of looking at the HRA over the 30 years to ensure that we've got enough resources to deliver everything that we want to deliver.
Yeah, thanks, Nick, and feel free, Suzanne, if you want to make any comment on this one. But I think one of the key points here is that what we're trying to do is to improve the services that we offer, and we've made some fairly substantial savings from bringing Newark and Sherwood Homes back in-house, but what we don't want to do is just bank that or use it purely for rent reduction purposes, when actually we think there's a lot that needs to be done and can be done to our housing stock and to our housing service. And we've already done quite a lot, and there's new posts in place which are working with our tenants, and there's a lot more still to be done that we want to do. And I think when we had that discussion, Paul, that you're referring to at budget time, I think we were concerned that we could end up making a reduction on the rents, but then be in a position when we can't do the improvements that we want to achieve when the rents are already extremely low. It's not as if we are a high rent organisation; we're a very low rent organisation. But there are areas which I think, if we went round the room now, I'm not going to do that, but if we did, we'd all say, well, actually, we think that the repair service could improve, or the liaison with tenants could improve. And these are the areas we want to improve, and these are the areas we're improving, and plans are being put in place. Nick's mentioned the green agenda as well. Can you imagine what it would cost to turn every one of our houses into a green property, green energy? I mean, there's no way we could find the money to do that, but later on the agenda there's an item where we've applied for a grant to do that to a number of our properties. There's so much that we can do and so much we want to. We want to be an ambitious organisation in terms of our housing stock and our housing service, and I think that's why we were very cautious about reducing or not increasing already very low rents. And if you want to add anything at all to that, Suzanne?
Thank you, Chairman. I suppose the only thing I would add is we've just come out of a period of rent reduction of 4 years, and the impact on the long-term financial plan was £11 million. So we've got that shortfall to make up. And what the Chairman and Nick have both mentioned, there is an awful lot of variables that we need to consider and where we want to balance between investing in our existing stock and building new homes, and what that will cost. There's the fire safety bill, the building safety. There's lots of things we need to consider. So what we're actually going to be doing over the next week, and we have started, is to actually look at the narrative around our 30-year business plan to make sure that we refresh it, because there's been quite a few changes over the years. So it's just to take a stand back, a fresh look at it. So we're seeing where we are over the next 30 years with a plan that we will keep regular 5-year reviews when we know with a bit more certainty what those things may look like. And I think for information, the estimate on bringing our homes to carbon neutral was £81 million. So that gives the scale of the kind of work that we need to do. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Anyone else want to come in? No, if not, thank you, Nick, for that presentation. The report is just to be noted, which we will do. Thank you very much indeed. So we'll now, feel free to leave at that point, Nick, now you've finished your reports. So we'll go back then to where we left off on the agenda. So the next one is item 13, which is commissioning service level agreements annual review 2020-2021. Suzanne.
So apologies, Chairman, you've just got my dulcet tones for the rest of these reports. So for this report, it's just for noting, outlining the achievements of the 3 commissioned services with CVS, Home Start Newark and Newark and Sherwood Hub. Am I on the right one? Yeah, just checking, sorry. I don't think I am. Am I? Apologies, yes, I am, just double checking. So the year was full of challenges, as you can imagine. The report sets out an overview of the outputs and the outcomes achieved during the 2021 year. The appendix provides a summary of the overall delivery and does not necessarily reflect specifically what the Council's contribution delivers in isolation, as it's difficult to extract that. The general principle is that we provide support financially and in staff guidance to support a locally based partner who is better placed to deliver that added value. So I suppose picking up what Johnny was saying earlier about how we work with partners. So happy to take any questions.
Johnny.
Yeah, I think we're speaking a lot tonight. Are we on? Yeah, Chairman, thank you. I'm the representative on the CVS for the District Council, and the CVS in particular do some absolute great work. I won't go in too much tonight, but they've been getting in difficulties due to certain circumstances due to COVID. And I would love to be able to sit down with yourself and the councillors to be able to see how we can support the CVS more, especially because we know how much they've done during the COVID outbreak. And I personally think they could do a lot more with a little bit more support from this council.
Thanks, Johnny. Any other comments? Questions? No, okay. Yeah, I mean, I think it's 3 organisations who've done well this year, and take your comments on board, Jono. I'm sure we want to continue our partnership with the CVS, and it may well even be that we can identify areas we can potentially do more with them, and I'm sure we'd always welcome further discussions regarding any urgent areas and how we can and if we can assist. But you know, 3 organisations that have done well. I think they've spent our money wisely, and it's good to get a full report. So I know Andy Hardy's been heavily involved in this, hasn't he? So thanks to Andy for his work. Recommendation is on page 113, paragraph 8, which is really just that we note the report and the Appendix A with the detail and that the annual review for 21-22 be presented to committee next year as normal. So I don't think we need to take a vote on that. It's just for noting. Item 14 is the annual report on community centres in the general fund 2020-2021. Suzanne again.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is a report for noting outlining the progress in respect of compliance issues that were issued in the audit report commissioned in 2019. So the report sets out progress made in relation to the operational assurance requirements to ensure both the council and the operators or tenants' respective positions are protected in respect of risks, and the operational obligations to comply with the regulatory framework, such as health and safety checks, are effectively in place and available for scrutiny as required. Appendix A provides an insight in respect of the 4 centres, the lease arrangements in place, and a short summary of the previous 12 months, which were dominated by COVID. So that's a short overview, and the recommendations are that the report and the appendix are noted, and again the annual review for 21-22 will be presented to committee in 2022, and hopefully we will be able to show a lot more about the impact and the contribution that these centres have made to the community. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Jono.
Chairman, these community centres are great in the community, they really are. I'm really lucky that in many hats that I have loads of community centres in my area. And Coddington in particular is a great community centre, but we've been at odds with the people that run the community centre due to the car park, and it's majorly used by the children and the parents to be able to park safely during school time. If we were to lose that car park, my guess is it would become one of our unsafest schools to park at the moment when it's one of our safest. And the reason I mention that is Fernwood Community Centre has a big car park next to it. I'm not sure about the others. And what can the council do to make sure we have some control if the car parks are going to be signed over as part of the community centre, to make sure what our hopes and aspirations are for the area are sustained. And the reason I say that is there was never anything to put into the Coddington contract in particular to state that the parents will be allowed to carry on using that car park. So at any point, if they decide to do so, they could close that facility for the parents. And I want to make sure something like that doesn't happen again.
Thanks, Johnny. Yeah, I think some really good points there that you make, and I'm sure Suzanne will pass that back to Andy Hardy to bear in mind when discussions about possible transfer of freeholds continue in coming months, because the idea, I think, of transferring freeholds is that it's the right thing for the community. Well, we need to make sure it is the right thing for the community, don't we, and it's done in the right way. Okay, thanks for that. Lawrence.
Mr. Chairman, I hope I'm not jumping ahead here, but I'm concerned about the ratio on community centres in general. I'm not sure that really. Cleveland Square has their own hall centre, and they've been only saying only 6 can attend. I know some other centres might think we should have 15 or 30. So I'm concerned about not many of our elderly people can, because we've got 3 volunteers, literally, and that means you only can have 3 more people to attend. So I'd like to know what the strategy is to open up the centres in general for like Cleveland Square and so forth. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I mean, this specific report is about the general fund community centres rather than the ones within the HRA, but I take the point, and I think I mentioned in my report earlier on that we're ready to go with those. Suzanne will have more information, I'm sure, but we're ready to go with those as soon as the national government restrictions allow us to. Do you want to add anything to that, Suzanne?
Yes, so Lawrence, the opening of the centres as we speak at the moment is governed by the Safe Systems of Work, which is what permits no more than 6 people in groups. So what I will do is I will get the officer to send you some information about what the plan will be. Obviously there are potential changes to the last lifting of the lockdown that's due to happen at the end of June. But the idea will be at that point, it's whether the social distancing remains in place amongst other things. So I'll get someone to speak to you directly, Lawrence, about those arrangements so you can be up to speed and on what the plans are.
Anyone else? Once again, the report is just for information. Again, thanks to Andy Hardy for another comprehensive report. We'll now move on to item 15, which is housing service compliance, end of year outturn performance. Suzanne.
Thank you. So just to note that this is the last outturn report, well, the last report in this format that we will be sending to committee. So the next report will have an amended format, and just to say that the team are always happy to receive feedback about how it might be improved further. So there'll be an extension of the different types of compliance that's in that report, and obviously if there's anything else that you wish to see, please do let me know and we'll do our best to accommodate that for you. So just looking at the exceptions then, the annual gas inspection sat at 7 properties out of compliance. Now, we will always aim for 100% compliance in this area, and we also acknowledge the hard work undertaken by the teams to do their best to work with tenants who have been reluctant to give us access. And as you know from previous committees, we now have further tools in our tool bag to help secure the safety of residents through things such as the intermittent timers, which will hopefully encourage people to work with us. So 7 is not ideal, but we have checked individual cases and I'm happy that they're all in hand. We've had some delays as well with the courts around getting injunctions, and that's now starting to go through the system again, so we will be able to get in and get access. Obviously, what would be really useful is if anyone does approach you and they have concerns about allowing access for their gas service, by all means provide some advice yourself or do speak to us and we'll do what we can to support that individual, because I think some people, particularly if they have health issues, will remain concerned about access for a while yet. Solid fuel heating checks. The last month, the compliance team were unsuccessful getting into the 2 that were due, but they are working with colleagues to secure access to these 2 properties. We've also continued to experience challenges around the maintenance of stairlifts and hoists. As you can imagine, these are our customers that have multiple needs and also generally have been shielding because of their medical circumstances. But just to reassure committee that we have been working with the tenants and with their occupational therapists to ensure their safety during this time and to secure access as soon as we may. But overall, performance at the end of year has been really strong. Thank you, Chairman. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Suzanne. Any questions or comments? Linda.
Thank you. It's not a question. I just think it's worth commenting, Chairman, that and we've said it before, I think the performance within the housing team remains extremely strong, especially given the year that we've had. And, you know, we absolutely did the right thing bringing it in-house, but I think Suzanne and the team need to be congratulated yet again on this continuous upwards trajectory. Thank you, Chairman.
Absolutely. Thank you. Michael.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd like to echo Linda's words there as well, but also especially the maintenance people who are actually going into homes, and with everything what's been happening over the last year with COVID, I do think a special mention should be made to them because of the extraordinary work they've done and the actual thing they've put themselves through to actually help keep our tenants and residents safe. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Lawrence.
Well, I've mentioned this many times before. Many elderly people have got 3-bedroom properties, and I just need to feel that some of these people need an incentive to try and downsize, because as you know, there's over 4,000 or so on the council waiting list. There are many families that could benefit from a 3-bedroom property, and it's just trying to see what are we doing to try to get people to either consider and some incentive by the council to encourage them to go downside, because a lot of these people are not able to climb the stairs anymore. Converting their premises is going to cost lots of money. We know we need more bungalows, but I just feel we need to get some incentive to get people to downsize for the benefit for the people that are on the waiting list. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Suzanne, do you want to come back on that one? Or
Thank you,
leave
Chair.
that to the next item?
If I could just ask you to park that thought, Lawrence, because there's an item towards the end of the agenda on getting to know you visits, and that's one of the reasons, and I'll explain it a little bit more during that short overview of that report about what we're doing to try and help that. Okay, thank you.
Okay, no more. Oh, one more comment, Paul.
I'm sorry, Chair, and I'm not a Homes and Communities normal member, but I've been trying to think of how I might be able to get this in here, and you'll probably might shoot me down and say, no, you can't bring that in here. I've had a case where somebody's come to me who lives in an adapted bungalow. Those people both work, they lead an ordinary life like everybody else who doesn't need an adapted home, and they wanted to take up the opportunity of right to buy. And we seem to have a policy, and I've had conversations with Suzanne about this, but I did want to raise it at some point in a committee, that we've got a policy which disallows people with disabilities who live in an adapted house or accommodation from being able to buy that property on the rent to buy scheme. And I wanted to put it on record, but I also wondered whether we could actually look into that and develop options around that, because it feels to me that those people are being discriminated for because they've got disabilities, and we as a council shouldn't be doing that.
I'll let you off on this occasion, Paul. It's not directly relevant to the agenda item, but no, I mean we have had actually those discussions on more than one occasion in this committee, and what I can absolutely assure you, because I've been absolutely assured, and I've asked those same questions, and we've gone into it in some detail with the officers, is that it's not our policy; it is the national legislation. So when we get a right to buy request in, then we look at it in accordance with the legislation. So if it can be allowed, it will be allowed. If it can't be allowed, it won't be allowed. It's not about a local Newark and Sherwood policy. It is about what the law says in relation to right to buy. So for us to do any different would require a change in the law. Not a change in our policy, because our policy is to comply with the law. So we will always say yes if to a right to buy request if that's what the law indicates should be the case. And it's very complicated, and I'm not going to go into all the detail. I'm not sure I understand all the detail. I don't know whether you do, Suzanne, because there's experts within the council who look at these in minute detail to work out whether or not it should be a yes or whether it should be a no, and to make sure that we can't be challenged on that because we've made the right decision. So if we need to have a different policy, it would require a change in the law.
But it's still discrimination. Whoever makes the law, it's still discrimination.
I presume that law has been looked at in terms of discrimination, but I take your point, and I know there's people on both sides of the, all sides of the chamber that would actually, potentially like to see tenants of those properties allowed to purchase them. There's pros and cons, of course, and it does seem, I can see where you're coming from. It seems unfair that somebody who is in an adapted property because they need to be in an adapted property is unable to purchase the property, whereas somebody in a non-adapted one would be able to purchase it. Equally, we spend a lot of money on adapting the properties, and those are adapted for very many years, and it could be that several successive tenants benefit from those adaptations. So you can see it from both sides, and you can understand why the government's made those rules, but from our point of view, we just follow the law, whatever the law indicates in that case, and we don't have the discretion to say, oh, well, we'll let that one through, or that seems fair to let them have that. It just depends on the facts of the case, pure and simple as that. And, you know, we have had those discussions previously along those lines. So we just haven't got that discretion, unfortunately. I don't know why I just switched my microphone off to speak. Okay, so I think it is just worth just reiterating again. I mentioned it in my chairman's report, and it's been mentioned by at least a couple of members. You know, the excellent performance throughout what's been a tremendously difficult year. I think if we got this level of performance within a normal year, we'd be delighted. But I think, you know, we're even more delighted. And our congratulations go to all of the team. And, you know, we are seeing some of the benefits of bringing everything together and supporting each other rather than having the separation of the company and the council. But most of all, we're seeing the fact that we've got a really dedicated staff who've worked extremely hard and you know, really care. And you know, we're seeing the benefits of that, and to see where we've come from and the improvements that have been made in some areas is fantastic. So thanks everybody. Did you want to say something else, John?
I do, Chairman. Lots of people have said lots of nice words about our officers this afternoon. Can we make sure some of them are minuted, just so if I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, it's just for noting, so we will do that. But yes, minute those positive comments. Thank you. And then on the similar line, housing services year-end performance 2020-21. Suzanne.
Thank you, Chairman. So to carry on the wave of performance, this report is the end of year for housing services, and it also includes performance indicators and tenant satisfaction. So firstly, I'll take you through the Q4 performance indicators and then move on to the annual PIs. So of the 58 quarterly performance indicators due in Q4, 20 have achieved or exceeded their target as demonstrated in the pie chart in 3.4. This is a slight decline on Q3 where there were 26 with a green status, but PIs that have dropped below their target have reduced to 6, which is pleasing to note. And just to say that some of those PIs will never have recovered because of the impact of COVID as well. So it's just to explain that. So further details on those PIs that have missed target are shown in paragraph 3.5. Paragraph 3.6 details the annually monitored indicators, and there are 11 of these. 3 are included for detail in 3.6, and the remaining 8 I'll come on to shortly. Section 4 of the report covers tenant satisfaction, and customer satisfaction for key housing services is collated monthly by an independent external contractor and also annually via our survey of tenants and residents, the STAR survey. Table 3 demonstrates the STAR survey headline performance. The committee will note there's no data for 1920 as that was due to the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, so the 2021 data is compared against 2018-2019. A separate report will be brought to the next Homes and Communities Committee to share the detailed analysis of the STAR findings. These results are again very pleasing considering the challenges faced by our tenants over the year and the Directorate's ability to provide services through lockdown and within tighter restrictions. Satisfaction with neighbourhood and an increase in tenant satisfaction that their views are being taken into account is particularly pleasing, as there's been a number of consultations undertaken over the year. And the next report on the agenda further expands on those results. Section 4.5 shows the overall satisfaction for 2020 to 2021 at 93%. That is an outstanding figure in normal times to have that level of satisfaction, but hopefully it will also give the committee reassurance that bringing the service back in has not adversely affected the customer experience, in fact achieving a 2-point increase on the previous year that we measure against. Satisfaction scores are also included in Table 4. And the committee should also note that satisfaction with the repairs service has increased 3 points since 2019-20. And this may reflect the changes that we made to simplify the repairs priorities and also to extend the number of repairs that would be done as an emergency that were introduced in the summer of last year. Satisfaction with our customer access service has also increased by 3 points compared to the previous year end figure. The recommendations are set out at paragraph 9. Thank you, Chairman.
Thanks, Suzanne. Any comments or questions? No? Okay. Well, once again, excellent report, and some very pleasing figures, particularly bearing in mind what we've had to go through, providing those services through lockdown and all the restrictions that have been involved. I mean, Suzanne's mentioned a number of them. Just one of those that stood out to me was percentage of tenants satisfied with responsive repair service, and that's still over 80%, despite the difficulties in providing that service when we're in a lockdown situation, people shielding, contractors difficult to find, etc., etc. So yeah, very well done to the whole of the team once again. So thank you. Right, item 17, housing services customer journey feedback. And
This is
we
the
have
last one, I promise.
some slides in front of us, don't we,
Yes.
I believe. Suzanne.
Thank you, Chairman. So you should all have the print of slides. Apologies, we're not yet able to do a hybrid meeting, but we're working on that for future meetings coming through. So I just wanted to talk you through. So for those who are new to this committee, I'll just give you a little bit of background. That part of looking at how we engage with our tenants, so the participation and engagement framework, was to understand from some of our tenants about their experience of services and how they wanted to engage with us going forward. So this presentation in front of you summarises the results of several housing services that form part of the review around the customer experience. And also we complemented this with historical transactional data and the weekly feedback that we get about our services, comments and complaints, to bring together quite a full picture of where we are. And this insight data was collected via telephone between December last year and March of this year. The historical data that we've used has gone back up to 2 years. So just to explain the methodology behind it, is that what we went to were people that more recently experienced our services, because what we know is that people will remember the last interaction they had. So if someone hasn't engaged with us for 4 or 5 years on a service, we haven't got them. We've picked people that have recently experienced those services. So if you want to turn over onto the lettings and voids page. So the survey base for this was 200 people. So 19.5% said they didn't find our letting service helpful. So just to give that a number, because I always think it's confusing when you have percentages rather than numbers, that's 39 people said that we could be better on that. That was closely followed by the quality of our repairs. Now that should ring a bell, because as everyone knows, that was one of our priorities of what we need to do something on. And the speed, and that was a balance of a rush between making a decision, and then that worked for some people but not for others. So some liked to be able to take their time, get everything ready before they needed to move into a property. Others wanted to do it very quickly. Decoration, again, was another area. Again, when we're looking at numbers, this is 26 people, but it could be the same 26 that had the same view on all of those things. That's the joy of getting this qualitative feedback. But they, some felt that they had to decorate throughout, and it was expensive, and some mentioned grants, but they weren't able to get one, and no support or help moving in, and that tenants' responsibilities were rushed through. A variety around the quality, the cleanliness, loose cupboard doors, some things that really should have been done before someone moved in, and just general repairs. So adaptations needed. So to pick up the earlier comments, one mentioned struggling with stairs. Now you'd like to think that we get our ducks in a row to make sure that that's something that's picked up before we offer a property, to make sure that that's something that can be either matching them to a more suitable property in the outset, or being able to move swiftly to provide the adaptations that they need. And also there was something around works not being done before they moved in. So again, another area that we're looking at here. So what we've done, there's a couple of areas there where we've actually already done some responses and some improvements. So we've already revised our letting standard because it was almost a summary document and didn't set out all of the things that we do to make sure the property meets with our health and safety requirements and also the specifications that around our sanitary ware and such. So that's already happened, and we are going to be starting a pilot on our new empty homes pilot standard as well, which will also help to address the issues around decoration and the quality. So we are looking to implement a leaving well officer who will be working with the outgoing tenant to make sure the property is in a good condition to hand back to us, and to work with them where it's not, to make sure that they leave well, so they don't burn their bridges and they can come back and stay with us again at another time when they need to. But also around how we do more work around making the property fit for decoration. It's not about painting every property white, because most people, that's the one thing they can do, which is put their own stamp on the colour of the walls or the wallpaper that they use. So we're focusing more about how we can help them have walls that are fit to accept paper or paint. So they're not taking 15 years of wood chip off that's got 17 coats of paint and then finding that the wall underneath isn't fit. So we're doing some work around that, and also trying to complement that with some bespoke funding dependent on that family or that individual's needs. So there'll be more coming to you as that pilot progresses, and that's where some of the savings that we've accrued, they will be going towards funding that. So we're just doing it as a pilot at the moment, see if it works, what tenants like and don't like about it, and we'll keep it as a learning to keep that moving on. So that's just to give you a bit of update on that. The second slide on that page is around repairs. So again, this was based on 350 respondents, and as you can see, really good figures around the ease of reporting repairs there. So that's 311 found it really easy to do so. There was some criticism of the length of time waiting for a job, some misunderstanding around the priorities and the timescales, which, as we know, we've simplified, so hopefully that will address that. And the ability to fix the repair at first visit. We are going to be doing some work on that because there's some technicalities between right first time and right first visit. Because if you've got a job that you know is going to take 2 visits, it's still completed right first time. So we know that that's an area we need to work on. And then there's around the quality of the repair and the customer service and communication. And some of that's going to fall into our ICT work that we're doing to upgrade our systems so they can better support the communication with tenants. So if we can let them know that we're going to be going out within the next 2 hours, they can make sure that they're in, so it should cut down on non-access and such as well. So we also asked what we could do to improve. The main one was timescales that we've already addressed, and again, like I say, the customer service, which we're going to address with our ICT improvements. So that's work in progress. If you move on to the next page, which is the focus on rents, this was a base of 350 respondents, and what we wanted to test here was the value of receiving the rent statements, because the rent statements cost a lot of money for the council to produce and to send out. And what was interesting of the respondents is that 70% of them valued that rent statement, and there was 80 that felt it was a waste. So I think we've got some more work on there to understand what they use that for, and if it can be provided in a different way for the majority, and those that do need it by paper form still get it in paper form, that we don't force everyone to have it in a paper if they're just going to go, I know what that is, and pop it in the bin, or hopefully shred it given it's personal information. Just see what else there is in there. Generally, there was really positive responses about the options available to pay rent, so nearly 90% happy with that. 3 people mentioned the removal of the ability to pay at local offices, but I think realistically there's a lot more move in terms of the costings of how you, the cost of the transaction for paying the rent varies considerably, with the cheapest I understand being direct debit, but obviously that's not suitable for everyone, but it's how we can make suitable alternatives that are cost effective for the council as well as for the individual as well. So we will be reviewing the ways to pay and also what we can offer as an online offer for those that can pay in that way. So along with other things, it can enable us to have face-to-face time with those that need it or can't interact online or don't want to interact online. The next slide is around value for money, and this links into what you were saying earlier about the rent values, Tim. So the most valued repair, as you would expect, and the most complained about area of our services is also repairs, but that's because of the scale of the repairs that we do. And also the reason for that is that it's reassuring, it's a peace of mind, it's safety and helpful for those that can't do those things themselves. What's also interesting is that 32%, although that's not a lot of people, it's 25 people, would like garden waste bins, which I think is an interesting one because we'd obviously do the brown bins for gardening collection, so that makes me think there's probably something else to explore there. It may be where it's either assistance with an additional bin that they don't have to pay for because there's a cost, or maybe it's also something about managing their gardens and things more generally. So an area there we will look into. So they were the main things really, very low numbers that were unhappy with those services. So the top three factors in value for money was, they said, the quality of the house and the size of the house, that the rent is cheaper than elsewhere, and the quality of the repairs that are done. And I think we're taking steps in all of those to make sure that they're where they need to be. So again, turning over the page onto tenant involvement. Now this for me is a real area where well, it was the purpose of doing this in the first place, but a real area of where we can do some improvements. Particularly as we improve our ICT as well to make it easy for people to engage with us. So there were 580 respondents involved in this, and of these, 207 gave feedback to us in the last year. 373 didn't. So of that feedback, through 137 was through surveys, 33 was a complaint, 21 was a compliment. So I think that's quite good because it means that we're doing some proactive work with residents as well as accepting their complaints. So anyone who'd made a complaint was included in this feedback area. They thought that half thought it was a simple or good process to be able to give feedback, but this is one area that we do want to improve. And 51 people said they would have liked to have heard back on what difference their request or their feedback made. So what we'll be doing is in the tenant annual report, we will be putting some of that you said we did in there, so it hopefully will address some of those enquiries as well. And what we've done is where people have said that they would be interested moving forward in shaping and looking at our services, we've now collated those up. So we've got 314 people wanting to engage with us about our services, improve our services, and also challenges on where we're not doing what we should be. So I think that's a really positive start in terms of where we want to go with our tenant engagement and participation. And then finally, the area of ASB. Now, what I would say to this is we couldn't do everything all at once. So this is going to be a priority for us in the next financial year, but we'll start gathering our data and information now. Our numbers are very low. There were only 30 people consulted as part of this. So in terms of the percentages, it's not statistically valid to talk about percentages. But the general themes were a general feeling of a lack of support, the length of time taken to resolve, the length of time the issue's been going on for, and also that 50% of the incidents also involved the police. So I think that's quite significant because that can impact on the other things, such as how long it takes to resolve, particularly if there's a court case there. So what we did identify as quick wins ahead of any work on our antisocial behaviour service is about how we manage our expectations from the outset. So being clear what we can and what we can't do. I've recently dealt with a case where the outcome that the complainant wanted was for that person to be evicted. So I had to talk to them about that realistically. That wasn't going to be an option because to manage that expectation. So I think there's something there that we can do to help with that. And also more regular updates on the case. because sometimes even if there's no update, you should be updating to say there's no update. So we're going to be doing some work around that as well, just to give you a bit of reassurance that we're not just sitting back and doing nothing regarding that. So we will be having a project with a number of tenants to look at our antisocial behaviour service overall and how we can improve it, as well as linking into the work that Alan's team do, because obviously theirs is a wider response to the community protection, whereas we have different tools as a landlord as well. And then finally, on the back page, there's some notable business action plans. So it's just really to give you a couple of examples of where we are using this feedback to influence some of the work or prioritise some of the work that we're doing. So we will be outlining the findings and the actions in the quarterly rent statement, just to close that feedback loop to make sure people know what we've done with their feedback to us. So really, it's just an overview to show the identified work streams and the proposals that we've got that highlighted in the actual report at section 3, and they've been turned into an action plan for regular monitoring and reporting until the implementation's been complete. Thank you, Chairman.
Thanks very much, Suzanne. Johnny.
Chairman, thank you very much. When I first became a councillor, I took a real interest into our voids, to the point where myself and David Payne had a meeting with the Chief Executive at the time. I was quite disappointed with the outcome of that meeting, to be honest. I had several meetings about voids. I'm not going to go into it too much now because I don't think it's the time or the place, but I would like to have a meeting, if possible, to discuss voids and what I found when I looked into it in the past, if possible, for you, Chairman.
I'm sure we can do that, Johnny, absolutely, yeah. Lawrence.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to mention recycling on housing estates. I noticed Chatham Court and Grange Road and St Mary's Gardens and so forth, they don't have any recycling provisions. A lot of cardboard is a big issue, glass, bottles and that sort of thing, cans, and I just want to see if we can try to get some of these things recyclable. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Do you want to come in?
Thank you, Lawrence. I'll take that back, and I don't know why that is. I'm sure there will be a reason, but I'll check it out with our refuge team and see what we need to do. I presume there'll be Paladin bins, the big communal bins. So I will find out and come back to you on that one. Sorry, I don't know the answer right now.
Anyone else want to come in? No? Okay. Thanks again, Suzanne, for a very comprehensive report and presentation as well on the report this evening. I think it's been a extremely useful exercise, and you know, getting the information from our tenants is always critical and really important. And I'm glad to see the actions that are being put in place to address some of the issues that have been raised, and I'm sure we'll continue to address those and any other issues that come up. But I think one of the big improvements that we've made over the last 6 months or so really is tenant engagement, and I think we've got more things planned in terms of continuing to engage in an even better way with tenants. But to get tenants' insight, our customers' insight into the service we provide and how we provide it is fundamental, really, and it's great that we've been able to make these improvements. So again, thanks very much for doing that, and well done to everyone involved. The recommendation is that we note the contents of the report and the overall positive responses to housing services provided by the council, and also the identified work streams and proposals highlighted within section 3 in the report, which will form an action plan for regular monitoring and reporting until implementation. I'm sure that some of that will come back to this committee for us to monitor the success and the implementation of that. So I don't think we need to take a vote on that, but I'm sure we can note the contents of the report. Okay. So item 18 then, annual tenancy audit process, getting to know you visits. Suzanne again.
Thank you, Chairman. We're nearly there. So this report is to update committee on a new approach being introduced to get to know our residents better. So as a housing authority, it's important we know our homes and we know our tenants to make sure we meet our obligations as a landlord. So this report sets out the benefits of conducting a getting to know you visit every 2 years to ensure that our information is up to date and to look at things like knowing who is living in the home and that that home still works for them. So Lawrence, to pick up your point, that will enable us to identify where we have residents living in unsuitable accommodation, or maybe early signs that they're starting to not be able to manage that accommodation as well as they could. So we can have some proactive conversations before it gets to a crisis point where they have a fall or need to be moved into hospital care, to try and proactively manage some of that work. Also to ensure that the house, as in the wider, the housing is in good order and not in disrepair. So this isn't about us going out and checking up on tenants, but as it's our asset, we do need to make sure that it's in good order and that the repairs that need to be done are being reported and that they're being actioned and that the quality is good. And also that nobody's took any load-bearing walls down, for example. It doesn't happen very often, but unfortunately it does happen on occasion. As I said earlier, it also helps us to identify and respond to early signs of property or tenancy failure. It also enables us to proactively work to prevent fraud and subletting. But just to say, the aim of this is very much about supporting our tenants. This is not about going in with enforcement. If the tenants work with us, whatever they've got going on, we will do our best to support them. That's not to say enforcement action won't be taken, but that's generally going to be where people won't engage. So I think this is a really positive step towards having a more proactive and engaging relationship with our tenants, particularly those that don't call on our services very much. So it's just to note the recommendation that for the planned implementation of the rolling programme of tenancy audits across all of our council tenancies, except for those in our extra care, because we meet with them regularly anyway. So we've excluded those. And that members support this programme within the communities. So it would be really good if you could help us help tenants understand that this is a proactive good thing, and it's not about us going in and trying to find issues. Because if you can imagine, if you've only had a service that's been reactive for a number of years, and this is no criticism of the service we provided before, but the requirements since Grenfell is that we must make sure that our data is correct. And we're doing some work with our ICT as well to make sure that that data can be collated and refreshed in a timely manner. But this is the first step to making sure that we've really got all of that nailed down. So thank you, Chairman. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Suzanne. I've got Paul and then Rona.
Thank you, Chair. And Suzanne, thank you. I think a lot of the reports you brought to the meeting today have been really positive and certainly show an ambition that was probably been lacking maybe before you came along, or maybe just been bubbling under. But I think you have brought a lot of positivity to our housing services, and I thank you for that. I think this idea is a cracking idea, and I'd certainly like to be involved in my ward, and I'd be happy to go along with officers and knock on people's doors and meet with them to talk about it. I have got concerns about this, things around managing data, and not just things like GDPR, but actually managing that data, the amount of data that's going to come in, managing the expectations of tenants, and also you hinted at the fact that making sure they don't think it's a matter of somebody coming in and checking up on people. But so I suppose all those things, we're going to get positive things out of this. I know within the report that the financial implications are none. I doubt that to be true, if I'm honest. I doubt, if we're going in there talking to tenants about bits and bobs, they're going to want to talk about their leaking little valve or whatever, and all these things. There's going to be things crop up which we've got to address, and that's about managing expectations. So I doubt very much that if this is done properly, the financial implications will be zero. I don't think that'll be the case. But I suppose the question, because of that, and the things that I've said, was, did you consider perhaps putting this through, I don't know, a small amount of households as a bit of a test of how this might go, just so you can deal with a few data samples, see how it goes, bring a report back to this meeting and say, yes, we can stretch this across the whole 5,432 properties, or not. So the question is, did you consider that because of all those problems that I'm looking at it thinking that's going to happen, that's going to happen, that's going to happen, just to go through a process in the first instance of smaller numbers?
So through you, Chair, this is not optional. You know, we can control the rollout, and we will be doing that, because again, it is about managing the process. And I think although we said this, we've increased our number of tenancy officers and tenancy assistants already. So the financial implications of swelling the team has happened, and some of that has come out of not savings, but just existing budgets that we've been able to do. So in theory, all we'll be doing is proactively identifying those. So instead of finding a leak that's damaged all the floors on the ground floor, we might be able to catch it when it's a leak just in the bathroom. Or instead of going into a property where we find a customer that's got hoarding issues and you can't move from any room to any room and there's a fire, we might be able to get in there as they're starting to have issues and put some preventative work in place. So in some respects, it's spend to save. But we will be monitoring the rollout of that. And if we come to a point where we've turned over too many stones, we will pause. We will solve those things and then move on. But it's just that there is a plan to do them over that time frame. But obviously we will be conscious of what it does throw up. But we've almost got to start it to see what it throws up, because this is not to say that over the last 10, 15 years we haven't been into our tenants' homes, because a lot of them we have. If you bear in mind, most of them have a gas service every year. So you, as part of that, you would expect anything significant to be fed back. So I'm hopeful that it won't be exhaustive.
Can I just come back? The recommendation A is the committee note the planned implementation of a rolling programme of tenancy audit visits across all council tenancies. Does that mean it's mandatory?
It is a reasonable request of a landlord to have access with prior notice. And I suppose the only thing I would say was I'll be... It is reasonable. It's the same as a gas service though, Paul, isn't it? You know, the purpose of doing this is to make sure that their home is okay and that they're okay. And I think providing you keep that in mind in terms of our intent is a good intent. I would probably question more what's, you know, talk to someone if they didn't want to let us in to understand what that might be. Now, they might have had really bad experiences of authority previously, or a bad experience of us as a local authority previously. So, you know, this is not going to be bright and breezy by any means. We will have those kind of barriers. And that's where I suppose I'm asking for your assistance, where if someone comes to you worried about that you provide some of that reassurance about what we're there to do. I know I can't, you know, this is as best as I can answer it, Paul.
Rona. So Rona first, Lawrence, and then I've seen your hand, yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you. I just wanted to say I think it's a really positive move, and I really welcome that, because I know in my area there's an awful lot of long-term tenants who, whilst will have had their gas servicing, probably haven't seen necessarily anybody else from within the council unless there's an issue with it. And I think it's a really good opportunity to connect, to let them know that you're there, who it is that that they can turn to, and it is strengthening that connection, I think, between all the tenants and the council. And I think it's going to throw up things. That's only natural, but I think it's a really positive thing. So I really welcome it. Thank you.
Thanks, Rona. Lawrence.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I volunteer once a week at the Impact on a Baptist church, and I see lots of people that are homeless, sleeping out and about, and these people need support because they've got mental health, they've got alcohol and so forth. They might have been evicted, and there are all sorts of cases we see every week. And I think we need to try and address some of these issues of people. People are sleeping on sofas at people's homes. Sofa surfing is another big issue where, in fact, we don't always know the numbers of people actually needing support, and they're not, getting on the council waiting list and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of issues at the Impact on a Monday, which I've been going to quite regular. And I just feel a lot of these people are sort of down on their luck and need a lot of support, I'm afraid. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Lawrence. And obviously homelessness is one of the areas of our responsibility, and we get regular reports on those. Suzanne's team work very hard in those areas. I'm not sure this particular audit will sort of impact on that, but it's certainly something that's very much part of our ongoing continued work programme, and I'm sure Suzanne will note comments you've made, Lawrence, there as well, and factor that into the work that the team does. Anything else on this item? Tenancy audits, getting to know e-visits. No, okay. Well, yeah, absolutely support it. I think it's absolutely the right thing for us to do as a landlord. Pleased to see that we've now got the resource to really be able to do that, and hopefully some really positive things will come out of it, and hopefully our tenants will feel more supported because of it as well. So look forward to receiving some future reports on how things have gone. It is just for information, but as Suzanne mentioned, the recommendation is that we note the planned implementation of the rolling tenancy audit visits, and that we support the programme within our communities, and therefore hopefully we can all do that and encourage our fellow councillors to do that in their areas as well. So you may get some questions about it, and hopefully you can give a sort of positive response and allay any concerns that people might have, and hopefully they'll then see it as a sort of positive as we look to see how we can support them and what needs there are in those properties. Okay, we're almost there. So we've done item 19 already, which was the finance report. So that takes us just to the urgency item, item 20, Green Homes Grant Local Authority Delivery Phase 2, which is basically a good news story. The report's just for information. Decision had to be taken urgently because of some incredibly short notice, shall we say, Suzanne, wasn't it? You got about a couple of days to put this together or something, didn't you? So, but the outcome of this will be 53 owner-occupied properties that have got low-rated EPCs, E or D, will get money to put in either cladding or solar PVs with a 100% grant. I'm looking at receiving £567,853 for that, and also 20 of our own properties, which I think are the only 20 with the low D EPC rating. Suzanne will have solar PVs installed, and that's a 2/3 grant, which will receive £91,765 funding for, and the other third, which is about 40,000, will come from the HRA energy efficient budget. So good news story for the area. Okay, just for noting, which there are no confidential and exempt items, so that brings us to the end of the meeting. And apologies, but just to sort of remind everyone that due to the safe working rules that have been put in place, although it's very tempting after such a long time to socialise, I'm afraid we will have to request that we all leave the building after the meeting. But thanks for your attendance, and hopefully see you all again soon.